and it's time now to draw some urban scenes or urban features, things like houses and flats. And these are great because the shapes, the simplicity is already there. And the key here is to not overdo things, not try and draw every brick or not try and measure every angle. Instead, what we can do is we can find that, a house is a series of shapes. For example, if we draw, to start with, a very, very simple house, we've got a square. Within that, we've got several squares. And perhaps at one edge, we've got a bigger square. That might even have a couple of little squares or rectangles next to it. And on top, we can have a triangle, a rectangle, a parallelogram, or other kind of trapezoids on top. And just like so, we have ourselves a house. We can then start putting shapes within shapes to start forming, if we want, more complex, architecture. So we have different things emerging in our windows, in our doors, for example. And all of this is just thinking in shapes. Instead of trying to draw a house, we draw it bit by bit. We can even start drawing the shapes to show the texture. So here, this is a bit like our hatching, really. So here's a few little squares or rectangles, and this shows what we've got is a house made of bricks, which we might have assumed before, but now we don't have to assume. We've got that visual information. Now notice how I haven't finished off the bottom of the house yet, and that's because it's very tempting to draw a straight flat line, but that doesn't look real, because really what's at the bottom is maybe it's some tarmac, maybe it's some grass. We never really get a firm edge all the way across. In places we do, maybe we've got some stairs here, so we draw some horizontal lines. And then we can come back and restate those lines. We can make this one bold to show the shadow. We can come up here, we can find other little shapes. Maybe we missed a chimney to start with. And even use hatching to create a different sort of texture, and not necessarily have to finish off the whole of the hatching. We can just do it part of the way across. And then by being light, doing very gentle hatching, we get again those ideas of shadows. Now we're doing people drawing in another lesson, but we can always put a couple of easy, simple people in our urban scenes as well. It brings a bit of fun, life, and sort of verve. We're also doing nature in our another lesson, but look, really simple shape of a tree, even just some basic hatching, and our little house is starting to take shape. Other urban features can then join on. So you might find, for example, we often get fences. So we draw slightly different textured line, less firm, because this is a wooden fence. And then within that we get these kind of slightly higgledy-piggledy vertical lines. Now we are suggesting those wooden slats to the fence. Can give the sort of fence posts that are in the middle and at the ends a bit more certainty. And just like that, we're starting to build up the idea of more of an urban scene, perhaps, little by little, simple shapes coming together. And you can easily do this both from your imagination, but also from observation. Let's move on to something a bit different. So one of my absolute favourite things to draw, we'll do it up here, is a lighthouse. And lighthouses just are in the most amazing places. And by definition, they've got to be a bit rocky and a bit sort of ominous, trying to keep the boats away, aren't they? And we can just start pulling together triangles and squares. You could call this a rectangle with sloped edges. You could call it a triangle with its nose chopped off. But either way, it's a very simple shape. And just by gradually building together different shapes, different lines, different ideas, we can actually make quite a sort of complicated network of houses and buildings associated with this lighthouse as well. So now this lighthouse has got a little cottage attached to it, a little cottage facing away from it as well. And we can then just do very simple windows. Even adding a bit of contrast by blacking in some of those windows. Nothing wrong with a good chimney. And down the side of a lighthouse you often get little windows as well, don't you? And then here you might have bushes, you might have rocks, you might have anything really. So why don't we do a little sort of cliff coming down? And what is a cliff if not another shape? Look at that, it's just a rectangle. So when we're drawing these things, again, from imagination or from observation, it's all about simplifying and just finding those lovely shapes, that you can see in the scenes all around you. In here we can add little details, little bits of reflection, we can add the kind of light, give it this sense of something beaming out. And to help with the shape and also show, again, like here, what it's made of, we can do these kind of little lines coming around, little brick marks amongst that as well, and little bits of hatching to show that maybe there's a bit of shadow on one side of this lighthouse as well, maybe even a little bit down here as well. And just like so, we've got another really quite lovely little scene. If we wanted, we could add little details into the sky, maybe suggest a cloud with some gentle lines, maybe even pop a little bird or two up in the in the distance there. And whilst we've done that, let's add another kind of building coming off, because now we can sort of fill up this page just like we are going to do with all of our different lessons. We can fill up our page just through really simple, lovely drawings, stretching our imagination, stretching our skills and developing our ability to draw anything using simple shapes. Along here, let's do a little row of houses. That's always quite fun to do. We can kind of start imagining those shapes coming up and down. So let's do a rectangle, another rectangle, another rectangle, make them different shapes and sizes. Some can be tall and thin, some can be sort of flat, long, wide, and then they can have different triangles on top or even semicircles. Flat tops in places, we can leave this one flat, and there we go. And just like that, we've got this kind of row of, well, they're just shapes, aren't they? But what happens if within those shapes we start adding shapes? So we can do these rectangles to suggest windows. That's all we're doing, we're suggesting. We're not trying to fill in the blanks for the observer. We can even do little circles if we want to make things feel a bit quirky in places. We don't need to draw every one either, so we can just start leaving more sort of textural marks in places. And come back, and here we go. Why don't we do big windows on this with little arches? Again, what are big windows with arches? They are big rectangles with semicircles on top. And over here we can have a couple of larger windows as well. Simple shapes. Underneath we're going to have some shop fronts, and all of these ideas are about finding not just the simple shapes, but what is it that makes what it is we're drawing, what makes it recognizable. So a building is recognizable through these big shapes. A street or a shop front is recognizable through having this sort of rectangle at the top. It might have a little sign or two in places as well, so we can find those signs. It's also recognizable because there might be lots of sort of people wandering along outside it. And we're doing people, as I said, in another lesson, but we can treat them as really simple shapes. We can even treat them as simple little squiggles or circles, and just by their context within this street, they work as people. And this is how you can draw anything, by not overthinking it, by allowing your sort of mind to switch off and recognise that we don't need to draw every little detail. And now we can come back and we can start restating things. We can even add little window details, we can hatch down, we can find the door shapes and how they meet at the road. The hatching is showing the inside, or showing that there is an inside. It's showing that there's something dark here. And again, notice I haven't finished off the bottom yet. As soon as we finish off the bottom, we make things a bit certain, and we lose all the flexibility to adapt But having now done our people, our hatching, I can come along and I can work out where actually should the bottom of these buildings all be. Not doing a hard, firm line, but doing a gentle line, which suggests that it's meeting somewhere else. And like this, you'll be able to go to your high street, take a photo of your high street, or do it in person, sat in a cafe, and you'll be able to find those simple shapes. Not drawing every brick, I'm not drawing every bit, but I'm finding the bits which matter, at least to me, because this is what it's about. We're drawing for us. Most of us, at least, are drawing because we want to. Maybe we want to improve, maybe we just want to relax and have fun. So I'm finding the bits which will make me go, yeah, I'm proud of this, this worked. And that's all I need to do. I don't need to do more. And if I want to do more, well, from this framework, we can build up, we can add colour, we can develop and sort of create more and more. Here I'll add a little pavement for context again, and then we'll move on and do something a bit different.